Good morning and welcome to this week's geography classroom. Now I am so excited about today's session because we're going to be talking about things that I love, and second of all because we're going to be talking about Oceans Day. Now every single year we celebrate World Ocean Day and it takes place on the 8th of June. So I know we're a couple of days late, but that is not a problem. Now, this started back in 1992 when the Canadians went to visit the United Nations and said that they felt more should be being done to help protect our oceans. They were worried about the number of fish that fishermen were taking out of the oceans. They were worried about people dumping their waste in the ocean and the effect that it was having on all of those amazing ecosystems. Now, there are lots of countries around the world that are completely dependent on fishing to provide them with a source of protein, with a source of food. But actually what was happening as our global population was getting bigger and bigger, we were taking more and more fish and it was having a really negative effect on those global ecosystems. So today's session, we're going to be talking about oceans. You guys are going to be doing some research because the whole purpose of World Ocean Day is to have young people just like you investigating, learning more about the oceans, and then doing what it is that you can do to protect them. And at the end of today's session, I'm going to ask us all to make an agreement, like a promise essentially, that we're going to do our little bit to try and help protect some of the most amazing species in the world. Now, I'm going to go through the list of things that we'll need for today's session, not much different from normal, but we do it every time, so it's important. So, you will need the map that you created on the first week, okay? So that might take a little bit of time to dig out because I was looking through all the work that we've done this morning and actually we've got huge amounts now. So go find your map from week 1. The other thing you need, obviously, as normal, is a pencil, and you're going to need a piece of paper, and get yourself some colouring pencils. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to go and collect those. We'll do the quiz first of all, and then we'll get started. Okay, so now you've got all your bits and bobs. Take your piece of paper as normal, and please can you write the numbers 1 to 8 on the back. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Right, let's get ready for the quiz. So, as usual, if you need to pause it between questions, that is absolutely fine. Take your time and make sure that you get those answers as correct as you can get them, and make sure that you spell everything as well as you can. So, question number 1 this week. What is the name of the largest hot desert in the world? So it's the desert we studied last week. What is the name of the largest hot desert in the world? Remember, because it's a name, it needs a capital letter at the beginning. Okay, question number 2. So last week we studied 2 different species that had adapted to the extreme climate in the desert. So could you name those 2 species? One was a plant and one was an animal. Okay, question number 3. So, does a desert have more or less rainfall than a tropical rainforest? So question number 3, does a desert have more or less rainfall than the tropical rainforest? Okay, question number 4. Can you name one of the adaptations that we studied last week that relates to the animal that we looked at? Now I'm going to give you a clue. I'm going to put some big ears up here. What was that adaptation? What was it for? Or, I don't know if you're going to love this, but what was the adaptation to the bottom of their feet? Okay, question number 5. Can you name the 6 global biomes? Now remember, we have a little acronym that helps us to do that. I'm not going to tell you the acronym this week, so I'm going to push you a bit harder, see if you can remember it. Okay, question number 6. What type of biome did we study in Canada? So what was the biome? The biome, remember, is another word for ecosystem. What was the one that we looked at in Canada? Okay, question number 7. Which of the continents has the lowest temperatures? So which ones were the coldest? And actually, if you remember, nobody lived there because the temperature was so cold. And then last but not least, can you name the 7 continents? So what's the name of the 7 continents? So I'm just going to make an adjustment to my board. And then I'll show you the questions. So we had these ones. So press pause if you need to. We had these ones. And then last but not least, these ones. Right, take some time to do the quiz. As I say, focus really hard on making sure you're spelling everything correctly, using capital letters where they're needed, and I'll see you back here in a second. Okay, bye. Welcome back, and let's go through the answers. So question 1 was, what was the biggest desert in the world, the biggest hot desert in the world? That is the Sahara Desert. Then the second question was, which 2 species did we study last week? So we had a look at the fennec fox, and we had a look at cactus or cacti. Does the desert receive more or less rainfall than a tropical rainforest? I feel like the clue is in the name there. It receives less rainfall. Then we talked about what are the adaptations to the animal in the desert. So the animal we're talking about is the fennec fox. So if you remember, it had those big ears, and that was to allow heat loss into the atmosphere because it's such a hot climate. It also had those big ears so that it could listen underground to hear for its prey. And if you remember, and I showed you my really ugly feet then, they have furry paws so that they are able to walk on the sand, which can reach temperatures which are extremely high. Then I asked you to name the global biomes. So we should have the acronym, the sad dog through the poo. So we've got tropical rainforest, savanna, desert, temperate forest, tundra, and polar. Then what was the biome or the ecosystem that we studied in Canada? That is the tundra. Then we had a look at what is the coldest continent in the world? That is Antarctica. And then the last question was, what are the 7 global continents? And they are Asia, remember how you say this one, Australasia, Europe, Africa, North America, and South America. So here's the boards with the answers on. Pause it if you need to. Oh, I'll hold that up properly. Write down all of the ones you got correct. Check your spellings, and we'll be back in just a second. Okay, so welcome back. I hope that you all did well in the quiz this week. Don't worry if you didn't. It's always really important that we do that just to help you jog your memory and try to keep all these things in your brain. Now, the first thing that I wanted you to do today was to bring your map that we created in the first week. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I would like us to add to this map the name of the 3 major world oceans. Now, there are lots of different seas, and like we have the English Channel that runs between the UK and the rest of kind of continental Europe, but there are only 3 major world oceans. They are the Atlantic, the Indian, and the Pacific Ocean. So, the Atlantic Ocean, that is the ocean that sits between North America, Europe, South America, and Africa. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to add the Atlantic Ocean to my map. Now, because it's a name, it has a capital letter, but that is the Atlantic Ocean. Now, sometimes people refer to the top part, the bit between North America and Europe, as the North Atlantic Ocean, and they refer to the part between South America and Africa as the South Atlantic Ocean. So we can add those labels to our map. Okay, the second ocean that we're interested in, and actually the one we're going to be looking at today, is the Indian Ocean. So I'm going to draw that on my map here. Now, the Indian Ocean sits along the coast of Africa, underneath the country of India, which is the southern part of Asia, and sort of between where we would have the Philippines. So we've got the Indian Ocean. Okay, and the last ocean that we're interested in, we're going to draw it twice because if you imagine the world is actually round and like a globe, so it kind of spreads onto both sides of the page. That is called the Pacific Ocean. And that sits between Asia and North America. So I'll show you here. I have actually drawn that on my map twice. So the Pacific Ocean here, and then here. Because as we say, the world is actually round, it's a globe. So when we think about it, those two would overlap. So the Pacific Ocean sits here and here. So please can you add to your map the the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. And then, as I say, we're going to be looking today in a bit more detail at what's going on in the Indian Ocean. So your world map now has got a little bit more detail on it. And actually, we're going to add a little bit more detail again, because specifically today, we are going to be having a look at what's going on in the Indian Ocean, but off the coast of a country called Mozambique. Now, Mozambique is a country in Africa that sits on the border of the ocean. So I'm just going to mark it on my map here and add the label. So Mozambique. Now, it's quite a tricky word to spell, so I'll hold it up here for you. Can you add that to your map, please? Okay, so now we've drawn our Mozambique label on our map, we're actually going to talk a little bit about what is going on in the ocean on the coast of Mozambique. Now, Mozambique is one of the best places in the world to go scuba diving if you want to see species that are called megafauna. Now, mega, as you can imagine, means massive. And fauna is another word for animal. Now, often I refer to plants and animals. Now, as a scientist or a geographer, you might call those flora and fauna. So flora is another way of saying plants. So I remember that by saying floral, because that reminds me of plants. So flora means plants, and then fauna means animal. And as I say, today we're going to be having a look at the megafauna, so the largest animals that live off the coast of Mozambique. Now, there are 5 giant species that live in the ocean there that are absolutely incredible. And I know this because I was really, really lucky. 2 years ago in 2018, I went on holiday there during the summer and I went diving with the megafauna. Now, I have to say, I love diving and I've dived in lots of different places around the world, but Mozambique is probably one of the best diving experiences of my life because the species that we saw there were huge. So, the 5 different species that we're interested in and that you're going to get the chance to go and do some research on today are whale sharks, humpback whales, manta rays, turtles, and then sharks. So when we went diving there, we saw 4 out of those 5. We didn't see the whale sharks. I was really disappointed we didn't, but we did get to see the others. Now, what I'm going to do is put up a picture of each of those species, okay? And while you just look at those pictures, I want you to decide which one of those you are going to investigate. Because the rest of the session, I'm going to hand over to you shortly and explain exactly what it is that I would like you to do. So have a look at these ones. Now, the reason that those incredible animals live, or they don't even live there actually, visit Mozambique at different points during the year, and that's normally in July and August, is because the Indian Ocean mixes with sea that's coming down from the Arabian Sea, which is just above it, and it creates what we call eddies. And essentially an eddy is where the ocean current goes around in circles. That is an amazing breeding ground for something called zooplankton. Now, zooplankton is a tiny, tiny, tiny type of plant, but actually the whale sharks, they live on that plant, so they're herbivores. Whale sharks aren't actually whales. They are, in fact, sharks, but they are the biggest fish in the sea. Some of them weigh up to 30 tonnes, which is essentially the same as a double-decker bus. These guys are huge, but they're not dangerous to us as people because, as I say, they're herbivores. They only eat this zooplankton. Now, what I would like you to do in today's session is this. I would like you to take your plain piece of paper, and the first thing that you're going to do is you are just going to draw the ocean, okay? Just across the middle of your page. And at the top of your page, we're going to put World Oceans Day 2020. Now, I'm just going to do this really quickly, but what I would like you to do is to take your time over this, because I'm going to ask you to create your own poster about one of those species. Now, the reason I'm asking you to do this is because World Oceans Day is all about getting young people, like I say, just like you, to care about the ocean. And the way that we do that is by understanding the incredible species that live there. So I want you to pick now one of those species that you are going to investigate, that you're going to find out more about. And what you're going to do, so I've started writing my World Oceans Day at the top. Okay, what I'm going to ask you to do is to draw your species, your megafauna, in the ocean on your page. And then I want you to find out 3 things about your species. I want you to find out why that species is under threat. So what is it that means that that species is having a tough time right now? What is it that human beings are doing that are affecting that particular animal? Then I want you to find out just some facts about it as a species. So, for example, I've just told you that the whale shark can weigh up to 30 tonnes and is the same size as a double-decker bus. That's amazing. That is so big, it blows my mind. And then the last thing I want you to find out about is the conservation of that species. Now, conservation is a word that some of you have probably heard before, but maybe not completely sure what it means. Conservation means to try and protect those species, to conserve them for future generations, so that when you guys are old enough and you want to go diving, which I thoroughly recommend, by the way, you then would have the opportunity to see those animals. Because if we don't do something as humans now, those species have the potential to become extinct, to not exist anymore. And that would be so, so sad. So I'll hold this up. World Oceans Day is going to go at the top. The species that you decide to focus on is going to go in the middle. And then I'd like you to find out what's threatening that species, some facts about it, and then what is being done to protect it. What I would love you to do then is to get your parents to send me your species and your posters. And then I'm going to start sharing them on my Twitter over the next few days, because that's going to give other people a chance to look at your work, and for the World Ocean Movement to know that you guys are now essentially guardians of the ocean. And then the last thing that I'm going to ask you to do is to make a pact with me. Now, I live right by the seaside. I know some of you don't, but you will probably get to go and visit the seaside at some point. Now, there is a movement, and it's called Take 3 for the Sea. And what that means is that every time you go to the beach, you collect 3 pieces of litter and put them in the bin. And the reason that you do that is to stop that litter ending up in the ocean, and to stop these incredible species like the whale shark, like the humpback, like the turtle, from eating them, and then actually that can potentially kill them. So I want us to almost make like a brownie guide promise that we will take 3 for the sea. So next time you're at the beach, and every time you visit the beach from now on in, you will make a promise to do that. If you can do that, then we've done our job today. We've learnt from World Oceans Day, and we're helping to conserve these incredible animals. Right, I hope you have an amazing session, and I cannot wait to see your work. I'll see you next week. Bye.